Hi, I'm Tracy Soltis, your leading health and nutrition coach and molecular biologist. I've consulted with hundreds of people around the world on their human journey. So if you're a seeker looking for answers, information and knowledge, you'll find it here. Come on a journey with me as I explore the science, the physical body, and the cognitive and energetic space of what it really means to be human. Welcome back, everybody, and today I've got a beautiful episode for you guys. It's all to do with the moon cycle and the menstrual cycle, so what I like to call the divine feminine flow. So if you've seen some of my posts come up on Instagram, I do run a course here in person called the Divine Feminine Flow, which is all about women's cycle awareness, and I also have a 6-week online course that's launching later this year that goes through so much information about the woman's cycle in so much more depth. So perhaps you've already heard about this and that's amazing, and you've tapped into this one because you want to learn some more. So awesome. Let's get started. What we're going to talk about is we're not going to talk about everything because it's actually quite more complicated than you might actually realize. So we're going to talk about some of the cycles and which cycle that you might actually fit in, so that you can start monitoring your cycle a little bit more, and the sort of things that you can do during different phases of the moon to actually help you schedule and assist with your nutrition and your exercise and all of those sorts of things. So let's just get to it. And I guess one of the first things I want to ask you guys is, have you ever wondered why 1 minute you're energetically exploding with energy and can do all of the things, right? And then the next minute you can barely think about what to have for dinner? Am I right? I mean, this happens to me all the time. You know what? I'm going to share with you guys that a lot of people who work with me, they watch out for me during a full moon because they know that I'm literally running around on a buzz with all of this energy, and I cannot control myself. And you guys know who you are because you're listening to this. You know exactly what I'm like. I'm absolutely out of control. I'm just buzzing around all of the time. And then next minute, 2 weeks later, when it's a waning moon and the moon's almost gone, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like all I want to do is sleep. I do not feel the same buzz. And there's a reason for that. Okay. And so we're going to talk about one of the main cycles, just one, because there's actually others as well that need to be considered when we're kind of working as a female in this body, in this beautiful vessel that we've been given. We're just going to be talking about the moon cycle and the way that the moon impacts the way that we function. So while I don't know your exact circumstances and there might be some other factors going on for you, I'm just going to be talking about the moon and the amazing moon cycle. Okay, so I'm not including things like stress management, what you're eating, all of the things that might be toxic to the body, all of that sort of stuff. We're not talking about that today. Now, you can learn so much more about all of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in the online course, and if you come and attend one of the workshops. I've got one coming up on September 4, so keep an eye out for that. And if you haven't got a ticket, they do run out because there's only 12 people that actually join me each session. We like to keep it nice and small and intimate so that there's lots of questions and there's lots of circle chats and things like that. So anyway, all right, let's get on to it. So most individuals have heard of the 4 phases of the moon, but they aren't actually aware of how the energy of the moon can play with the energetics of the divine feminine. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about divine feminine and masculine right now. We're just going to be talking about women in general and women's menstrual cycles. So if the moon can move the oceans, right? It can move the oceans. It can definitely alter the biodynamics of your cells. Okay, when we think about who we are and what we are and how we're energy trapped in this physical body, probably shouldn't say trapped, we chose to be here, didn't we? But we've chosen to come into this body for a reason, okay? And so if you think about the energetics of the moon and how much pull that moon has during different phases, there is an undeniable understanding and knowing there that must have some impact on your own body. Okay, if it can move the oceans and the tides, it can definitely have some effect in your cells. Okay, now men and women are different. Okay, and this should be celebrated. All right, so I just want to be really clear is that we are different. We are all different and unique on so many different levels in so many different ways. Okay, but too often in this modern time, we compete, we compare, we question why instead of intuitively tapping inward to our knowing. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, we need to understand that we don't need to compete. We shouldn't be comparing. We should be asking questions about why all of this fits together and how it all fits together and what that means for you as an individual. Okay, not everybody else, just for yourself. Okay, now it wasn't that long ago. Honestly, I mean, look around you, where you're sitting, the building that you're in, the things you've got around you. Okay, it wasn't that long ago that humans actually roamed the earth as nomads. Okay, it wasn't that long ago. If you think about evolution, the scale of evolution and the millions of years that we're being told that we've been here for, who knows exactly how long that is or why we chose to come here in the first place. But when you think about it, I mean, we've been roaming the earth and this environment without shelter and buildings and all of the stuff that we have around us for such a significant amount of time before we actually came into this modern era. Okay. So after a huge number of years of evolution from the smallest of organisms to a fully functional conscious being, we have been connected to Mother Earth our entire existence. Okay, so we're energetic light beings. Yes, we're energy, we're connected to a physical form of the human vessel. Okay, important to understand we are a conscious being within a physical body. Okay, and men and women are different in a physical form. Okay, in a cognitive form. Okay, our hormones are different. Okay, the way that our genetics is expressed is different. Okay, our physiques are different. Okay, the size of our organs are actually different. Okay, the way that our mind and cognitive functions operate are different. Okay, we are different but uniquely powerful and equal in the same right. Okay, there's no one better than anybody else. There's no gender better than anybody. There's nothing like that. We're just different. Okay, men typically operate on a 24-hour sun cycle and women operate on a 29-day moon cycle. Okay, so men and women are significantly different when it comes to cycles, and honoring this diversity is one of the ways that we can get the most out of ourselves. This means, however, that it's important to recognize that women, we do not operate in a linear fashion, okay? We are not meant to operate on a high all of the time. And there's such a beautiful power behind that. We are supposed to ebb and flow, go with the seasons, ride the roller coaster of highs and lows and ins and outs and with and without. We're supposed to flow that way, okay? But we're in a modern era where it's just significantly more difficult to do that now, okay? These 9-to-5 routines, these jobs, these 5 days a week pressures that we have of doing all of the things in a routine, in a very structured, logical way, it tends to go against the natural form of the way that the feminine wants to go. And that plays out so much all of the time. And when women stop listening to their bodies and stop listening to their intuitive knowing, that's when we go into burnout. Okay, because when there's highs, there has to be lows for women. We don't operate the same as men. Men typically wake up, they go with the sun, they get a massive dose of testosterone in the morning, they're ready to go, they're out, they're doing stuff, they're exercising, hopefully, they're moving their bodies. They're, if you go back to a nomadic, point, they're like hunting, okay? They're out, they're searching for food, they're, running. I mean, nomads spent a lot of time running, okay? Running and moving and chasing. I mean, that was all part of it, right? And then hopefully they catch food, and they weren't always catching food because sometimes there just wasn't stuff around, which is why there was periods of fasting. But that's another topic which you guys can listen to on other episodes. But then they would come home in the afternoon and they would start to relax, okay? Their energetic level would start to decrease and lower, and they would become less energized, okay? And then by the time the sun sets, okay, how often do you as women sit at home, and if you're partnered with a guy, he's sitting next to you and he's like closing his eyes at 7:30, and you're like, hello, like, hello, are we going to watch this? Are we going to hang out, or what's going on here? And they're asleep. Okay, it's so annoying, but it's not his fault. It's actually because that's the way that the cycle works. Okay, men are more active during the day, and then as soon as that sun goes, their energy goes, okay? Their energy shifts and it changes, and they go into that period of melatonin release and wanting to sleep so that they can get up the next morning and go. So women, on the other hand, we are completely different, okay? We don't operate that way. We typically run on a 29-day cycle of the moon, okay? So much more complex and different to the way that the male tends to operate, okay? So we go through the seasons in this cycle period, which is why there's so many ups and downs. There's so many twists and turns. And what's happening in this modern space is that instead of surrendering and letting go and moving into these ups and downs, we're thinking something is wrong with us because we can't go all of the time, or we're down, or we're feeling flat, or we're feeling different emotions. Yes, you are, because you are so energetically connected to the universe and to everything else around you. You take on the energy through the course of the month. So of course you're going to feel the ups and downs of life so much more than men who sit in a sun cycle. Okay, so we need to look at this as just one particular cycle, but there's also your circadian rhythm, okay, which is your internal biological clock, okay, which gets you up and down and moving for the day, and the hormonal balancing. Okay, so there's a lot of things to understand and to navigate when you're in this particular vessel. Okay, it is complicated, but it's manageable, okay, as long as we're surrendering and we're allowing the process to happen rather than fighting against it. Rather than thinking that there's something wrong with us. There is nothing wrong with you. You are amazing. You are just doing such an incredible job, but you might just need to tweak it a little bit so that you're not so hard on yourself, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more. So I encourage you deeply to acknowledge just how much you are balancing within yourself each and every day. Okay, a lot of which goes completely undetected. Okay, you're working and doing so many different things energetically, mentally, from a cognitive perspective, from a physical perspective every day. And it's very rare these days, and it is getting better, okay, with, like-minded women who are listening to these types of chats and who are actually exploring, the tribal and sacred aspects of the feminine. These things need to be acknowledged. Okay, you are doing a lot more than you need to do, and it is time to give your body a break and lean in and surrender rather than trying to fight and trying to do all of the things all of the time. Okay, so cut yourself some slack, give yourself a break. If you don't feel like doing shit, don't do it. There are priorities. You are in control of these things. So I do want to make clear that when you're not on internal contraceptive, so you're not taking, you don't have an implant that's releasing estrogen and progesterone, or you're not taking a pill or something like that, when those sorts of things aren't being used, the majority of women, and because I don't have time to talk about all the different types of cycle patterns, we're just going to stick with the one. So most, and sit into the majority, apologize for that, but most women will ovulate at a full moon and will bleed at the start of a new moon, okay? And like I said before, you might have noticed that I post a little bit about the moon on my Insta page, and that's because I'm so in tune with the moon, right? It's a positive and a negative. I know it's coming every month because I'm like, when is the moon coming out? Yes, the moon. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can get shit done now. Woohoo, kind of thing. But then the moon starts to go and the full moon's been out, and then it starts to get into this waning moon. I'm like, oh my God, when is this shit going to be over? I'm so energetically fucking exhausted, right? Ugh. So if you guys go through this, then this is exactly what's happening, okay? So, and like I said, you just have to ask my work colleagues how much I buzz around the office over a full moon period. I mean, I'm seriously annoying. I'm like 1 minute I'm like bouncing around and like blah in everyone's faces, and then energetically when the moon's gone and vanished, I'm tapping inwards and I'm resting and I'm recovering, but I'm also like, like, oh my God, what just happened? What did I just do? Like, how am I going to get myself up? What am I going to feed myself today? This is so normal, and everyone thinks that there's something wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. If this sounds like you might be more in tune with the moon than you realize. And that's a beautiful thing. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go through some of the basics here because honestly, there's so much to cover. And if you're keen to know more, you're just going to have to join me for my exciting course that's coming out later this year. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of today's episode, but it's so exciting and I can't wait to bring this to you guys because it's just going to reestablish the foundations and get women where they need to go in such an authentic space so they're not going into burnout all of the time. Okay. All right, so there's 4 main phases to the moon that we consider when we're working with the divine feminine flow. We've got the new moon, which is when there's no moon at all. So when you don't see a moon in the sky, and you can actually, there's so many apps for this stuff now. You can just Google like when is the full moon in wherever you happen to be, okay, located in the world. Because I know I've got international listeners, so it will be different for you guys to what it is in Perth, okay? So this is when there is no moon appearing in the sky, okay? Because we've got to take into consideration the position of where you are as opposed, in juxtaposition. Is that right? To the moon? Oh my God, whatever. Okay, so no moon is when there's a new moon, all right? So letting go of the old, coming into the new, clean slate, fresh start. Waxing moon, okay? This is the first quarter of the new moon. That's when the first quarter appears in the sky. Then, of course, you've got the full moon, which is the entire moon, being seen in the sky, and we've had some beautiful supermoons lately. I mean, that's when they appear really close to Earth and they're quite substantially big. We just had a Sagittarius moon, and we're going to talk about astrology right now, but and planets too, like, have like a little influence on you, but let's not go there. Okay, it's basic physics, but anyway, full moon, entire moon in the sky. Okay, and then you have this waning moon, which is when you've got the last quarter of the moon appearing in the sky. And so the seasons of your cycle are linked to the different phases of the moon, and there's typically 4 options, okay? So this is where it can get a little bit complicated, so I want you to bear with me. And if you haven't grasped everything after this session, don't worry. There's plenty of information out there. You just need to do a little bit of research, and I will be putting up more posts on my Insta page as well about this because I am moving more towards the launch of my course, and so I'm going to be putting a lot more information up shortly. All right, so if you're on a white cycle, this is when you bleed during a new moon. Okay, so when there's no moon in the sky, when the energy has declined, that's when you tend to release. Okay, so you're releasing all of the old energy, all of the physical stuff that needs to go. It's being released and it's being dumped and removed. Okay, you are on a pink cycle when you bleed during the first quarter moon. Okay, you are a red cycle when you bleed during a full moon. And you are a purple cycle when you bleed during the last quarter of the moon. Okay, so the most common cycles are white and red, okay? But I just want to be clear in saying please don't compare yourself to others or make judgment of yourself if yours is different. There's a reason for that, okay? A very, very, very important reason for that, and it should be honored. Please don't try and manipulate, change, or, force your body into a particular cycle because you're actually doing exactly what your body wants itself to do. And we don't want to be forcing it away from what it's actually trying to energetically move you towards. Okay, I just want to be really clear on that. So For the sake of this episode, we're just going to focus on the white cycle. And that's when you bleed on a new moon, okay, so no moon, and ovulate during a full moon. And I always envision wolves howling at the moon, right? Because it's like, oh, all of the sexual energy and the wolves are out and they're howling at the moon. So you're like super energized and ready to start procreating and getting out there kind of thing. So that's kind of how I remember it, okay? So during the new moon, these are some of the things that tend to happen for someone who's on a white cycle, okay? And something to bear in mind and kind of ground yourself with the moon so that you know what to intuitively do for yourself during the different phases of the moon, okay? So during a full moon, so when there's no moon at all, it's a time to rest and reflect, okay? So the universal energy is low, okay? So stimulation needs to be kept to a minimum. It's also your time, okay? It's a time for you to check in with yourself, and self-care should be honored here. And the first 3 days of your menstrual cycle and your bleed are the most intensive energetically, okay? Old energy is being physically released and physical tissues are being metabolized. So it's a pretty big deal, okay? So for example, just to give you guys like an example of what I do during my cycle, and I'm on a white cycle, okay? So I'm just letting you know. And what I tend to do is I don't do any exercise for the first 2 days of my bleed. And I do that because I feel intuitively into myself and know that I need to have a break. I mean, when you're shifting that much energy and you're going through a physical process of releasing the old and bringing in the new, I mean, you need to honor that. And you need to give it some validation of the amazing shit that it does for you every single month of making this stuff happen. And I find that if I exercise, I feel so much more exhausted afterwards. And sometimes in the past, I've found that I get quite nauseous. So that's a clear indicator to me that I just don't need to be putting my body through any sort of physical endurance during those first 2 days. And maybe that resonates with you and maybe it doesn't resonate with you, and that's okay. There's no rights or wrongs. You have to tap into yourself and learn about the vessel that you're in, because you're not in everyone else's vessel. You're in your own vessel and what your vessel needs, okay? So let's move on to the waxing moon. So the waxing moon is when there's a quarter. It's leading up to the quarter moon. Okay, so we've made it through this release energetically and physically, okay, and now there's a natural order and equilibrium that allows the body to activate again. How exciting is that? So here is a really great time to start leaning into the doing aspects of your life, okay? So placing, things that, into your calendar that you can actually do and you have the energy to do. So maybe you want to make plans to catch up with friends here. Maybe you want to schedule dates, okay? It's an opportunity as well for you to be creative, to inspire, to be active, to be social, okay? It's a very sexual time as well, okay? So you've got hormones that are coming into play here as well. The estrogen starting to pick back up again, and we're not talking specifically about hormones, but it's important to recognize that there are significant changes as the energy is increasing in this particular cycle and the hormones are starting to rise. I mean, there is a guided natural sense of sexuality and sensuality that naturally comes out. So this is the time to get in there and be adventurous and seek out new, hobbies and different things that you might be interested in, because you will have the energy to do it. All right. Full moon. Okay. So this is the most energetic time of the month for a divine feminine whose cycle plays to the white cycle. Okay. And I know, like I've just explained to you, that's the sort of cycle that I'm on, is that I just buzz. So the energy that I take during this time is just out of control, right? So this is the time of play, of movement, of energy, sexuality, creative actions, and we're not talking too much about hormones and fertility here. Okay, but as we're moving through a waxing moon and into a full moon, that's when we're starting to become very fertile. And that's the time when we should be looking to, if we're looking to conceive, these are the optimal times, okay, around, say, day 9 to 12 of your cycle, depending on your circumstances as well. And you tend to have a drive to want to do those things as well, right? It's a natural instinct of the body to want to engage. Okay, so tap into this amazing energy. Okay, so you can be productive and lean into all of the adventure that you could possibly have. Okay, so these are the times to do stuff. This is the time to get shit done, pretty much. Okay, go and see people, go do active stuff. Okay, but just be really, really careful that you don't use this time to book in things later down the track when you're about to come into a decline. Okay, so once you've got past all of this energetic space, there's an equilibrium that needs to happen, and you aren't going to feel as energized as what you were, during this time in a week's time. Okay, so don't go start making plans for in a week or two because your energy is going to significantly drop. All right, so that leads me into our waning moon. Okay, so the waning moon and the waning energy is really based on a hunger for solitude and comfort. Okay, and this is all about equilibrium. When energy has been expended, it must be replaced. Okay, and this is typically the most difficult time for a divine feminine, but it doesn't need to be if you work with it and not against it. Okay, so the acceptance that you're not supposed to be linear and operating all of the time is really important, and it takes practice. And I've learned that lesson myself time and time again. Okay, is that I cannot force myself to do stuff. I'm not as creative and inspired and productive in this energy as what I was a week or so ago, because there's an actual equilibrium. You have to give and take equally, okay, in this cycle. And it's so important. And to not be so hard on yourself. Do easier tasks. Prioritize other things that are important to you. Self-care. If you don't want to be around other people, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But don't make social plans during this time. There is a period of time in my cycle where I don't take on appointments for people because I want to have that time for myself. Okay, I want to tap into my own and see where I am energetically and make sure that I'm doing things for me, okay? Because I spend a lot of time giving out to others. So I want to make sure that I've now changing that over and flipping it back inwards and receiving for myself. So that's really important. Okay, so this is the time to communicate your needs to your partner and breathe, okay? Breathe into the discomfort of negative emotions, all those emotions that are perceived to be negative. There's nothing wrong with being sad. There's nothing wrong with being angry. There's nothing wrong with being, hurt or upset or any of those things, as long as they're processed in a healthy way. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? So breathe and give yourself a break, okay? The divine feminine feels the world, okay? She feels the universal power, but it comes at a cost. And the downtime must be honored, okay? So you can try and fight it, and you will. Yeah, okay? You'll fight it and you'll fight it and you will fight it, because trust me, I've seen it and I've been through it. But there will come a point where she'll be like, nah, not doing this anymore. No way, that's not happening. And you will go into burnout, okay? The body completely shuts down, and that's not where we want you to go. All right, so remember, I've just explained a white cycle, and perhaps this doesn't relate to you, and that's okay. The energetics change throughout our lifetime, okay? And you'll have to listen to part 2. Yes, there's going to be a part 2 of this particular episode for more information, okay? Typically, most women on a white or red moon cycle, okay? So most women are, okay? However, when your journey changes course for some reasons, you can linger in a pink or purple, okay, depending on whether you're going towards a very significant growth phase or whether you're recovering from a growth and therefore changing in your vibration. Now, that might sound a little bit wishy-washy, but it's actually not, okay? So each different phase, so red and white are the two main ones, and then the transitional stages are pink and purples. And if you actually look back at this in your life and see how this might have played out, but maybe you're not as quite as in tune with your cycle as what you might need to be, you might see that there are particular times throughout the course of your journey where you've been through a stressful moment, where you've been through trauma, where you've been in a significant growth stage. So say you're coming and you're breaking through cycles or patterns or past habits, your menstrual cycle is absolutely reflective of that, okay? Things stop moving, things hold on, things let go early, okay? Everything in the body changes energetically to match what's going on with you and what you're going through on your cycle and through your journey, okay? It all comes together exactly how it's supposed to, okay? And there's so much more detail about each of those and how they work, and working with shadows and how you might be leaning in towards breaking some of your traumas or your negative cycles that keep coming up. I mean, that actually makes people transition between a white and a red. When you're starting to move through some serious personal growth, you're going to change your cycle and bleed at different times, and energetically it makes a lot of sense, okay? But we're not going to talk exactly about that today. Lots of this is covered in the course, okay? And something I just love communicating about in my workshops and in my women's circles is that it's time for us to get back to nature, okay? It's time for us to get back to basics, the foundations of us as women, and learn more about our amazing connection to the universe, okay? It's so important that we actually honor the vessel that we're in and understand that we are incredibly blessed to be given this incredible cycle, okay? It's not something that we need to hide. It's not something that we should be feeling as though is a hindrance or annoying or frustrating or holding us back. We need to lean into it. We need to know how to use it appropriately so that we can get the most out of it, because trust me, it's incredibly powerful, okay? We just need to know how to use it properly. And one of the things that I would just love to add to this episode before I wrap up is the planetary alignment with the moon, okay? So remember I said to you before that, the moon moves the oceans, okay? So I want you to remember the energetics of the universe play together, okay, with all the living electromagnetic fields within their reach, okay? Everything has everything that's living, everything that's breathing, everything that's living has an electromagnetic field, okay? So if you think that, say, Saturn or Jupiter or Mars or Venus, for example, doesn't affect your body, then you might need to do some further intuitive research on that, because I'm telling you, there's a lot more to it than you might realize. Okay, so planets along with the moon greatly impact things here that are happening on Earth. It's just, and I probably shouldn't say it's just simple quantum mechanics, but it's the basics, okay? It's the basics, and that's another thing that we cover in my course, is the basics of quantum mechanics and how everything talks to each other, how energy moves, okay, between everything. And it's so important to understand how that's affecting you and your body and your life, okay? This is just the beginning of some amazing more episodes that are coming, okay? I'm going to be leaning into this stuff a lot more. And that's where I'm kind of being guided at the moment, is to really work in with these women's cycles and to help women establish these healthy foundations so much more, because it's so important to empowering you and to helping you shine on your journey. And that's what I'm here to do. Okay, so keep your eye out for those. There's going to be heaps coming your way. This is such a massive change this year. Like, I'm myself moving through so much transition and change in what I was doing to where I'm going, and it's so exciting, and I can't wait to bring so many different things to you guys. I've got so much knowledge in my head and I just need to get it out, and I need to be reaching as many people as possible with all of the stuff that's going on here. So keep your eye out for that, okay? I've got my 4-hour in-person course coming up, Divine Feminine Flow, which is some of the stuff that we talked about today, but so much more. So it's breath work, it's connection, it's nutrition, it's exercise, it's hormones, okay, it's quantum mechanics, it's rituals. There's a whole heap of stuff that's where we actually work through in those 4 hours during that workshop. And it's such a beautiful day. The ladies who come to this, and it always sells out because I only have 12 spots. The ladies who come to this, oh my gosh, they are bonded forever. Like, they are just connected forever. Everyone shares and contributes and explores, and it is such a beautiful day. So if you are thinking that you would like to learn more about this or dip your toe in, or perhaps you're already dipping your toe in and you want to get more information, check out this event. The tickets are available on Eventbrite. So just head on there and type in divine and it'll come up. All right. And as always, lovely people, if you have enjoyed this, and remember, it is free. Everything that I offer on my podcast episodes is free. It's free information for you. My whole existence is about empowering people. It's about helping you on your journey. I want to see you shine, okay? And so if you feel as though there's someone out there who needs to hear this information, please share it with your family and friends, okay? Please reach this out to them. Yeah, so plant the seed sometimes, right? We just have to plant seeds. That's the most important thing. We don't have to force people to change or make them change or manipulate them to change. But, gentle seed planting is really important. And perhaps this is something that would help them in their journey. All right. And if you really enjoy it, please leave me 5-star review, okay, on Apple, Spotify, whichever platform you're using, because I think I'm on like 20 different platforms. So please do that. And that's all. Keep your eye out for the 6-week online course that's coming out very soon as well. I'm so excited, but I am very busy trying to get that all up. I've got like 5 or 6 courses that are going to be going up in the next, I reckon, 18 months. It's going to be huge, and I'm so excited to get it up there. There will be a collaboration with the Divine Masculine as well, so keep your eye out for that. It should be very interesting. So that is all. Okay, if you have any questions, send them in. I'm going to be doing some Q&As very soon in the chats, so they will be shorter episodes. But yes, please keep your questions coming because I love them. And when I have time, I love to jump on and I love to record some answers to those questions as well. But anyway, I have spoken enough. Hopefully you guys love that information. And like I said, it's just the basics. There's so much more that we can go into, but we don't have time for today. But until next time, take care and I'll speak to you later. Bye.
The information, views and opinions expressed on this podcast should not be used or treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, psychological or other advice by a qualified medical health professional. Hosts and guests on the podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions. And nothing on the podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any medical conditions. The podcast is not intended to replace any medical or mental health treatment. All information and advice provided is for general well-being and does not take individual cases into consideration. Neither Tracy Saltis, guests on the podcast, or any sponsors endorse the opinions, views or conclusions expressed or shared on the podcast. Tracy Saltis takes no responsibility for any symptoms or consequences as a direct or indirect result of this podcast.